Hello there, and thank you for watching the Designated Pundits. 2025 season is over, and we're here to recap the 2025 season. This is the official Designated Pundits MLS season wrap-up. I'm Bob, here today, joined by Scott. We are the Designated Pundits, and we're here to talk about the Western Conference. 2025 Major League Soccer season is now in the books, so we're here to break down. This is going to be a really fun episode. We're going to break down where the teams finished and compare that to our preseason preview rankings. Then we're going to go through some of the leaders, players who got the most goals and assists. We're going to go through teams that scored and conceded the most amount of goals, where the surprises were. Then we're going to talk about some storylines, some surprises. We're going to make way too early 2026 predictions and talk about what teams overperformed, which teams underperformed. It's all on this episode. We have a nice long show doc here, and I'm sure it'll only take about a minute and a half to go away from the notes that we prepared so nicely.
Oh, it definitely 100%.
Scott, it's been a long time. We all know what's going on with me. Kind of got the new house, so we're back in order. We are ready to, run through the 2026 season as if nothing ever happened. We got a little spotty on our coverage at the end of the year there, but we are looking at, full steam ahead.
You were very busy. I was very busy. Dion was very busy. Alex was very busy. It was just a very weird, busy end of the season. A lot of things happened all at the same time, but we're back, and that's great. I can't wait.
To everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us today. We're having a little bandwidth issue with Scott, but he is back on. And let's start. I prepared some graphics, so if you're watching Spotify now with video or on YouTube, you can follow along. The first thing I did was I took a chart of the Western Conference where the teams finished and where we had them previously. So, for example, you'll see the teams in red far underperformed what we expected, and the teams in green far overperformed what we expected. For example, LAFC, we had them at 1, they finished 3rd. Not that bad. But the LA Galaxy, you'll see them number 2 on our list, not where they finished. They finished 14th on this season. So just looking at this, I kind of highlighted a couple of the surprises. Were any of them, really stand out to you? I mean, obviously San Diego FC, that's the big story. I mean, they're the cover art for this episode, and they won the conference in their first Major League Soccer season.
No, San Diego, obviously, I think everybody wants to talk about them. I think we should talk about Vancouver, who San Diego, we said they probably wouldn't do that well because nobody knew anything about them. They were bringing in a lot of new players from outside the league, recycling older players that we kind of said, hey, these guys might be done. Like Godoy, we're like, look, there's a reason that Nashville let him go. And San Diego got the best out of all those guys. They all came together. But I'm looking at somebody like Vancouver, who maybe didn't do all the business that we thought they needed to do. They brought in a new coach, and they still just catapulted up the table. I think in some ways that's more impressive because we knew a lot more about them, and they still did it to us.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We kind of knew the whole roster. And one of the things I love saying, in Major League Soccer, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Well, Vancouver Whitecaps didn't get worse, but they didn't get better on paper heading into the season either. They did make a couple changes. We'll talk about that. But it was coaching for you, right?
Yeah, for me, coaching, because they still lost Ryan Gauld for 99% of the season. Yeah. Brian White had injuries for big chunks of the season, and that was a coach putting his team in the right system in the right places to get the best out of those players and getting the depth, which they didn't have a ton of it, but all the depth came in and contributed, and everybody did what they were supposed to do, and it worked.
Sorry, apparently StreamYard isn't bumping up your face when I bring the comments. We have Randy in the comments hoping for a bounce back from the LA Galaxy. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that all day long. They broke the record for going furthest in the season without a win after winning MLS Cup the previous season. And it's so strange because they had a terrible year 3 years ago. Then last year, they were fantastic, and now they're terrible again. Like, was the cup winning season the aberration after all, or was it just these injuries? And, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Just, finishing up here, Portland, they finished 8th. We had them at 12th. That's, ahead of where we expected. Again, injuries played a big role in where they were this season, but that defense kind of stepped up.
The defense really improved. The offense did not follow suit. I think that was kind of the trade-off. I think they stepped a little bit back from that all-out offense to improve the defense. I think that helped. The other one that surprises me, though, is Colorado here. I thought they had the roster. I thought they picked up a good coach. I thought that they were bringing things together to be better than what they ended up being.
Yeah, absolutely right. It was shocking to me. They're going to go with a new coach, Matt Wells, to replace Chris Armas. And Armas was actually, looks like he's going to be coaching in the NWSL this year. And I think that is the perfect place, because we've talked about this before, and I'm planning on covering NWSL this season on our show. We're looking, we already have a couple of new commentators booked who've been talking NWSL for quite some time. If I had a friend who didn't watch soccer and didn't know anything about the league, I would tell them to watch NWSL first. I just think tactically it's more sound with less surprises. It's less fancy. It moves just a touch slower. There's way less teams in the league. I mean, Chris Armas in NWSL, sign me up. I think he could absolutely do really well there.
Yeah, and if I recall, he's been linked to the Kansas City Current. Is that right?
Who won the Shield this previous season? Yeah.
Yeah, who are already a good team. So that could be a really good matchup.
Already off topic here, 6 minutes 53 seconds into the stream. Just figured I'd bring that up. If you are watching at home, we're live, man. You can comment in, and we will bring up anything you talk about. We'll talk about right here. Let's move on now and talk a little bit about the goal leaders. This is another really interesting one here. Western Conference, Vancouver Whitecaps, 66 goals. Didn't see that coming, and they did it without their previous year's leading goal scorer. A few non-surprises, LAFC. San Diego, I'm going to label them not a surprise. We thought that offense was going to be good. We thought there were a lot of question marks. We didn't know Dreyer, but we knew Lozano.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we knew that they were going to play a very aggressive offensive style. If you remember the interview we did with the San Diego podcast guys at the beginning of the season, they said, hey, this team's going to, live by the sword and die by the sword. They're going to go out and play offense and try and score goals, and then they're going to concede on the other end. And half of that was correct.
Half of that was perfectly correct. If you notice, we're talking goal leaders now. We're going to do goal against leaders in just a second, but there's really no surprises in really the top 5 here. Maybe the San Jose Quakes is something, but for me, it's the teams at the bottom that I didn't really expect. RSL, they dropped from 4th in scoring in the West in 2025 with 65 goals to 38 goals, 14th place. Portland, really similar, 65 goals last year, 41 this year, went from 2nd in the West to 13th. So we had a couple of teams really drop off there. And then of Austin, well, they finished bottom of the Western Conference for the 2nd year in a row. Were there any goal leaders here that surprised you, or did we cover most of them here?
I think the one I want to bring up is Austin, because Austin is the team that doesn't belong where they are. They invested heavily in their offense in the offseason going into 2025. They brought in Brandon Vasquez for big money. They brought, they had set themselves up to be offensively very, very good, and then they weren't. And I know Vasquez had, a big injury kind of in the middle of the season, didn't really get going in a lot of ways, but Owen Wolf leads this team in every offensive category that matters with 15 goal contributions total. I just wow, the rest of the team just really contributed so very little.
Yeah, and look, you're going to see, in the turnover, Diego Rubio option declined, Cascante option declined. You have Bakari got sold. He was one of the big DPs there. And I was trying to pull up the Brandon Vasquez numbers, because although he did miss a bunch of the season, he had 17.8 90s. I like looking at 90s when I look at season-long stats. 17.8, it's almost 18 full games, 5 goals. That was not what he was paid for. He was paid to come in and do a whole lot. And I would guess that's one of his smallest goal and assists per 90. It is his way lowest of his career. Never lower with any team.
And I just want to contrast that with like Real Salt Lake, who were right there, like 1 goal difference from them, who had Chicho, move on, who had Andres Gomez move on. And in that winter, they brought in Forster Ajago and, an Ari Peel out of Australia. And then at the very end, bring in
a pair.
Willie Agata from SKC. It's just not, the investment does not match what left, right? RSL was never going to be able to repeat because they didn't invest. They didn't bring in players of the same quality as the player that left.
Well, they did repeat. They repeated as the worst team in the Western Conference as far as goal scoring went, if you want to call that a repeat. Don't call it a comeback, Scott.
No. So no, I guess that's my point, is that like Austin surprises me because they did invest and it failed. RSL doesn't surprise me because they didn't invest and they got exactly what they paid for.
But when you look at this next chart, this is the one that lets me think that Austin could turn around real fast. Defensive leaders, teams who let the least amount go, it's much harder to defend in Major League Soccer than it is to sign a top striker. And it's funny because most people think of it the other way around. They're like, you get a couple Americans, you put them in a back line, much harder to do in Major League Soccer.
There's no money for it. The way that the wage structure is set up, teams are really discouraged from putting money into that back line because that gets you Austin level results.
Well, Austin number 5 in defense. I mean, hey, it is what it is, but that's a sign to me of a team that can turn around real quickly. The other top defensive teams, Vancouver, only 38 goals allowed this season. That's just over 1 a clip. Sporting KC, 70 goals allowed, almost twice as many, and they're at the bottom. Everyone else in between. Goals against leaders, San Jose Quakes, they led in 78 last year, only 63 this season. They're one of the most improved teams. Portland, 58 allowed is 8 better than the previous year, but they also conceded. They scored a lot less. So Portland, we saw like last year, over 2.5 goals, both teams to score every single time. Money. Portland, much more unpredictable this season.
Yeah, a lot less predictable. Funny thing is, Portland went from a team with a very clear offensive identity to just some team who plays some soccer. They just
I'd agree there.
Like what is Portland in 2025? I don't know. They're just some team who played some soccer, and sometimes it was okay, and sometimes it was good, and most of the time it wasn't even bad enough to comment on. I
agree. Looking at the Houston Dynamo in the meantime, no Hector Herrera. They went from second best at 39 goals allowed to 10th with 56 goals allowed. Apparently Jackie McLean wasn't replacing Ache. I don't think that was an experiment we're going to see again this year.
No, it was a big loss in leadership. I think if there's a lesson to be learned there, it's that Houston replaced, character leadership. And that really gritty leadership that Ache brought to the team with just like talent. And those are not the same thing, and they need to coexist on a team, but they're not the same thing. And Houston, I think, saw what that looks like. It's a drop off. It's not that good.
I agree. And then LA Galaxy 2 years ago, they were a great scoring team. They were a little leaky on defense, about middle of the pack. 50 goals allowed, 16 more goals allowed. That's almost half a goal a game. Now they're damn near last. They finish up in 14th out of 15 teams. And I think that, when you look at LA Galaxy, when they were trying to get that final win, it was like, okay, yeah, they're going to concede at the end again. They just couldn't get over that finish line. I think that has a lot to do with them. When LA Galaxy, we think about them, hey, yeah, their offense dropped off. Their defense dropped off a lot too, and that we can't blame on Ricky Puig playing ballerina in the middle of the field.
I think I'm going to disagree slightly with that. I think there's a point at which the defense gets exposed because the midfield doesn't hold the ball as well, because the midfield doesn't win the ball back as well. I think
you can't concede when you have possession.
Yeah, the other team's not going to score on me when I have the ball. I think Ricky Pooch, he's not winning the ball back all the time.
Sure.
But I think he presses okay. And I think the big thing was that he was the immediate outlet, right? The first pass from any defender or any turnover or whatever is going to Ricky. And so he's the guy that helps them solidify possession and not turn it over again immediately. And he gets them up the field. And then when they turn it over, that they have 80 yards to defend. And I think that kind of thing, suddenly the Galaxy lose that. They don't replace that. You start, turning the ball over on the repress a lot more quickly. And those are much worse positions. Your defense is now spread instead of compact. I think those kind of things matter. I think the midfield balance for the Galaxy wasn't there for most of the season. Royce certainly isn't that player to do that work that Puig was doing. And I think that's a big reason why the Galaxy, who didn't necessarily lose all of their defenders who'd been so important the year before, suddenly they have this huge drop off.
I could agree with maybe half of that. I do think I kind of disagree with the thought, and now I played into it too, right? I only have good things to say about Ricky Puig. Like, he comes back, the team's going to be fixed. But halfway through the season last year, LA Galaxy was not a cup contender. And in fact, people were complaining that Puig was dancing around the ball and giving away way too much. So I think your point is, really, really good on the soccer intelligence side. But LA Galaxy fans in retrospect may agree with you. But if you go back to our tweets in our inbox from the middle of the 2024 season, I don't think you'd get that same.
No, that's a very valid point. And there was something about the way that they were running it in 24 that wasn't right. But they figured it out in 25. I think there's the tools for them to sort of get back to it in 26. But you're right. It's not an automatic thing. You don't just pop Ricky Puig into the 25 team and it's all fine now.
Yeah. I agree. Let's move on. I made the joke, you just can't replace Jalen Neal. And, people, take that for what it's worth. All right. Now let's talk about some of the
gospel truth is what it is.
Let's look at the Western Conference leaders as far as points. Now, this goes a little bit against what I had thought. I always thought the Western Conference was the team with the big superstars. LA Galaxy, LAFC, they're signing someone big. They're going to be... No, when we look at this, you have 2 or 3 guys in the top 10. Like, it was the Eastern Conference with all the huge contributors last year, but there are still some really, really good, solid players here. First, Anders Dreyer, 36 total goals and assists, 19 goals, 17 assists. Then Denny Bouanga at 31, 24 goals and 7 assists for LAFC. Then there's a big drop-off, 24 for Petar Musa, 18 goals and 6 assists. Then you're going right down to number 4, Dejan Joveljic, someone who kind of fell off the radar for me in SKC. I guess that team was just so bad. He was scoring a lot of goals. I guess that didn't really matter. 18 goals, 2 assists. And then you go into the high teens from there. Albert Rusnak, Musovski, Lozano, Alushei, and Brian White round out the top 9. That's how many my graphics could fit. 10 would be a nice round number, but, I didn't want to make it too small for the people watching along on YouTube.
There's like names here that don't surprise me, right? But I want to bring up like Petar Musa, because in real time, I did not clock what he was doing. There was like one time in the middle of the season where I picked him for a goal scorer prop or something.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, Dallas didn't even do that badly this season. They finished in like 6th or 7th place in the West. So it wasn't like they had a terrible season, but something about it I never clocked it in real time.
They were one of the surprise teams, and I think because all of Texas was, when the Copa Texas is competitive and we bet on it, we talk about Dallas a heck of a lot more. They were middle of the pack. They put together a good performance, and it was Musa, and there were a lot of games where he had 2 goals. That might be a little bit why some of these players might have kind of scored in bursts here. I want to go quickly to the comments here. Foxy says, my disappointment in the Western Conference was Pedro Vite leaving. Vancouver could have done with him in the final, and Unam Pumas was a terrible move for him. I did not like him going to South America. I think he could have had some broader ambitions. And you're right about Vancouver. It's tough to leave a player like that, let them leave in the middle of the season. But, that's MLS. Sometimes you say no. Sometimes you got to say yes.
Yeah, I get the question, and this is a genuine question. Did Vite have to leave in order for the Mueller deal to really work?
Probably, yeah. Him and Sabi. I mean, here's the thing. Is Vite on the team knowing he needs to replace Sabi at the end of the season, the form he was in, or Mueller, better for the Vancouver Whitecaps? That's a whole episode.
That's a whole episode. That is a whole. Ooh, that's a big question. Part of me thinks when Vancouver looks at the direction that the league is going, and we're going to get into this later, but you're bringing in big players for big moments, right? Song Hyun-min comes into LA and immediately changes that team. Vancouver was performing very, very well, but they knew they needed a guy who had more magic, right? Who could be more clutch, whatever. And Mueller scored, important penalties, important goals for them. I wonder if that's kind of the gamble for Vancouver, to be like, we think this guy with his experience takes us a little further along the path that we actually need to go to be a competitive team. And we don't know when a season like this will come around again.
That's absolutely true. And it also could be a sign, like, did Ryan Gauld's not coming back affect that? That could have been in the plans too. Like, we obviously saw they traded Jaden Nelson, and that's something we're going to talk about in a little bit for Vancouver. It's like another, cog in the machine. Like, we went from this team doesn't have enough talent to this team has so much talent. There are guys not starting that should be starting. And we haven't even said the best player on the team last year, which was Sebastian Berhalter.
Yeah. Like, we barely talked about that. Look, I can talk about Vancouver all day. I want to talk about Seattle real quick before we leave this graphic. When Seattle did their business last year and they brought in Jesus Ferreira, and you knew that they were going to have Jesus Ferreira and Jordan
Morris, Pedro de la Vega.
Wow, yeah. Huge brain fog for that moment. Exactly. When you knew that they were going to have that attacking unit, like, how crazy would it have sounded to you to hear that Danny Musovski was going to score the most goals for that team?
Not only the most goals for that team, he was number 6 on the graphic for the West. 14 goals and 4 assists. I would not have seen that coming, but I think that's because he fits the system, which is just score a goal once in a while because we're hurting back here. I think of him the same way I think of Brian White. You put him on 10 teams in the league and he's a 4-goal scorer. You put him on 10 teams in the league, he's a 10-goal scorer. You put him on 10 teams in the league and he's, putting 14 in the back of the net. I think he has a lot of possibilities for him, but he found a fan base that likes him. You get the moose chant going on. He, got the bullhorn.
Yeah. I think he's quite an interesting forward. I think he's good at being a forward. Like, genuinely, like, there's a lot of forwards in the league who are like decent soccer players or whatever, but like, they're okay at being a forward. I think Danny Musovski is really good at being a forward, putting himself in the right places, and then just getting shots on goal, that kind of thing.
It's like me in men's league, on the Friday open scrimmage, I'm the last player picked, but I'm scoring a hat trick each and every time. Like, why not take me? Because everyone else on the field is better than me. It's just, I can put a ball back in the net. I don't even shoot. I just pass it there. Just is what it is.
Anyway.
Next up, we're going to talk about some surprises. Now, we've kind of been hitting these a little bit as we've gone on, but we're just looking for some surprises here. And I lost in my spreadsheet where I was going to talk because we've been so scattershot. What surprises you?
Look, we've talked about quite a few teams, and I'm pretty sure I've already teased whatever I was going to say before. So I'm going to bring up the San Jose Earthquakes. They brought in Bruce Arena. They invested heavily in a bunch of new players, which a lot of them were Bruce guys. So I don't even count that as being like, oh, well, you're really building a new team. Nah, you got a bunch of Bruce guys in who know his systems and know how to work with him. That immediately builds chemistry that other guys, don't have the luxury of having. You bring in, Chicho and Joseph Martinez to play, with Espinoza. And I just think like the offense was good. They scored a ton of goals. The defense was terrible, still terrible. I know they were most improved, yeah, because they were even worse before, but they were still terrible. I was shocked that team was not able to pull it together a little bit more and actually be a playoff team.
Yeah, like Bruce Arena didn't get fired for calling someone else a name at some point this season. Like I like his temper. You see the vein going. You're right. He got Ian Harkes. He had DeJuan Jones. Romney was like he had guys that he's played with before. Got to kind of pick his own offense, and we already saw a lot of players leaving, including Mark Anthony Kaye. Looks like he's out of there. Joseph Martinez. So I'm patiently waiting to see what the project is going to be. But the Quakes are one of those teams, I don't think I'm going to bet them for like the first 4 weeks of the season. I need to see their schedule. I should take that back because I need to see their schedule first. But like, I don't know. But I do believe in Bruce Arena. Should I?
That was the thing is I thought at the beginning of the season, the thing that this team would be a fairly competent group with a good offense. And I thought the defense, genuinely, I thought the defense would be better than they were by a lot. And I was like the one thing you can bet on is that this team will be savvy enough to know how to get business done when they need to get it done. And yeah, they kind of put together something at the end of the season to give themselves a chance, but for big chunks of the season they weren't that savvy team that a Bruce Arena team should be.
I agree. Let's move on and talk about some storylines that we followed. One of my favorite ones was LA Galaxy because they won MLS Cup over my New York Red Bull, and they had the epic collapse that we, could only dream about, including Red Bulls scoring 7 on them. That to me was very interesting because, again, there wasn't a whole lot of player turnover. There were some big names, like in the midfield, Brugman, who won MLS Cup Player of the Game, and some other movement. Their striker, letting Jovic walk, giving Christian Ramirez, kind of the reins of the offense doesn't seem like a good idea now. But for me, Greg Vanney, an experienced coach, someone who's done it time and time again with now healthy players, and Puig, again, we've talked about him, but he's not all positive. He has negatives that come with his name too. And it just was very, very surprising to me. If you're an LA Galaxy fan, you hear about Greg Vanney getting fired every week, but the rest of the league was kind of immune to that. Like I know that because I talk to LA Galaxy fans, but if I was on the outside, I'd be like, oh no, he just won MLS Cup. Like, of course he's got an extra season of grace. So the storyline I followed and I'm going to continue to follow is LA Galaxy. They were so bad 2 years ago. Then they won MLS Cup in a season where they were just destroying everyone. And then they were really bad again. What is the aberration? Is the aberration the 2 bad seasons, or is it the good one in the middle? And I would have sworn to you that the bad season was the down year, but now it's 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I agree with that. And mostly because I know they had to get rid of some other players too, because of the salary cap and stuff like that. I get it. They had the means to do something to be at least like a mildly competitive team this season. And for so much of the year, they just worked. I mean, for so much of the year, they just got rolled by basically everybody. What did they finish this season with? Is that 7 total wins on the season? 30 points. Like they were genuine wooden spoon contenders for so long, and that's the point to me where I'm like, you are the worst defending champion ever. And I get there's some things that happen, but other teams have had to deal with some of this, right? Other teams have had to deal with selling some of their better players in order to not pay the fines and be salary cap compliant. Other teams have dealt with injuries. You don't melt down completely.
What month was their first win in?
Ooh, that's a good one. I believe it was April or May.
It was June 1st against RSL.
Oh, I was so close. That's right. I remember it was against RSL. I was so sad. RSL Twitter was in a full meltdown, and rightfully so. It was pretty embarrassing.
And they were just about 500 from that point forward. 6 or 7 wins, 6 or 7 losses, 6 or 7 draws. Not great. Looking ahead, storylines. You had one that you wanted to talk about. We kind of already touched on it. The Vancouver Whitecaps.
It was Vancouver. We've really touched on all of this. The thing about Vancouver, again, that just kept me engaged all year long was the fact that they didn't have the stars for so much of the season. Brian White was injured. Didn't matter. They figured it out. Ryan Gauld, it was like, will he come back ever? It's all right. It didn't matter. They just kept going. It was the way that they, developed players. They had other players step up. Sebastian Berhalter turned into one of the best midfielders in the league, suddenly burst into the national team picture. I think all of that is due to the work and development that is happening there. You think of, Ali Ahmed becomes a real contributor. Sabi becomes a real contributor. You think of actually Pedro Vite, who was, who got a shout out earlier for being important to this team, who in the 24 season, we were talking about how much he was not good for this team. If you remember that. And then, Jaden Nelson, who, was a real talent for the team and had, some incredible bright spots and couldn't always get on the field. So I was just really impressed with the leadership and the coaching, and everybody else. And shout out to Laborda, actually, who had 6 goals and 1 assist out of basically the back 3, center backs.
He did really great over the last half of the season. I've been toying my idea, like, this is storylines to watch. Like, obviously we're going to need to, like, track Jaden Nelson throughout his career, but like Berhalter too. I mean, how iconic would it be? And this is they don't really play the same position.
Yeah, it's not
if Berhalter, I didn't even make the statement yet. I wasn't talking about Nelson.
No.
If Berhalter got an Olympic spot off the back of Gio Reyna.
Oh, that's not where I thought this was going.
That's what because which one are you starting right now? If you had to pick, I mean, again, we're talking like an attacking midfielder versus just a general midfielder, but
I thought you were going to talk Berhalter legacy in terms of the two Berhalters, but I like that over Gio Reyna. Oh, this is good. This is going to get me in so much trouble.
It's not a 1-for-1 comparison. It's like an 8 versus a.
Sebastian Berhalter is so much more of a all-action dynamic midfielder than Gio Reyna. Gio Reyna has some more offensive output with the ball at his feet on the dribble, but he doesn't deliver the set-piece ball that Berhalter delivers, and he doesn't have the defensive presence and the other kind of work ethic that Berhalter has, and he's not as durable as Sebastian Berhalter is. Sebastian Berhalter has the ability that is the greatest ability, which is availability. The dude has been fit.
Yeah.
He plays. Gio Reyna is a tremendous talent. I know Alex is not super hot on him and stuff like that. And I get it. And I get the reasons why he's very, very talented, but he does not get on the field enough. And a big part of that is that he's hurt all the time.
Wild. I mean, the fact that we're even saying this, of course, you would need a big move overseas, and this American talent pool now with Adams injured again. I think there's some room in this midfield, and okay, I want to see Berhalter go overseas. I love the Berhalter family. I love Greg Berhalter. I think he did a fantastic job this season. We'll talk about him next episode. Let's skip now and talk to early 2026 predictions. Now, this could be anything: offseason insight, miscellaneous. My first one is,
I like this one, by the way,
what I said about Vancouver last season. If you didn't get better, you got worse. They have a great coach. I think they are set up for great success. They stole Thomas Mueller, but we saw them fade after international breaks. We saw them fade after the final quarter of the season. Next year, we have a big disruption in the middle of the summer called the World Cup. We got eyes, we got players. Every team is going to be restocking from that World Cup draw, right? Like I think of like guys who I didn't watch, maybe like 2 World Cups ago, and I hadn't known. I'm trying to think of like some superstar who gets a move. This is going to be America's turn. Like any like South American teams overperforming here are going to be stocked up in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, you're thinking of like James Rodriguez, who shows up at the World Cup, balls out for Colombia, and is suddenly playing for like Real Madrid.
Yeah. Well, him exactly. I was actually thinking of Kylian Mbappe, like who kind of showed out in a World Cup and got himself a move too. I mean, I'm talking 8 to 12 years ago, but I think of that, and every team in Major League Soccer is going to be making big moves. We've seen teams do it. Red Bulls are making big moves. I mean, that's how you know. If you didn't get better, you got worse. You have a great coach, but you faded. You needed those guys. Ryan Gold, without him, with him, it's a different. I can't say if Ryan Gold was healthy, they would be in the same spot. Maybe they'd be worse. I don't know. And we'll never know,
I think the big thing is that Vancouver, all the things that you pointed out, Vancouver had kind of a small squad and limited depth. And so they got, I think they got tired, and they are largely built up of players who go play for the national teams, that most of them get called up for Canada and stuff, and some other teams. And so when you would have these breaks, almost nobody in that squad is actually resting, and they're traveling and they go out and they play, and then they come back and they're tired. And I think you're pointing out a really big, problem in that sort of roster building philosophy, that as Major League Soccer teams play more tournaments and have more games, and as the players are of a bigger sort of stature, they play in World Cups and international tournaments and stuff like that, there's more games, you need bigger squads, you need more depth, and Vancouver didn't quite have it.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think, you hit the nail on the head. You'll never know. People are going to lose their stuff. Oh, what do you mean they're better with Ryan Gold? Yeah, we think so. But you'll never, once history goes, like you can never relive it. You'll never know what they could do, and sometimes a great player makes a team worse. And there's just really not, I'm not going to say Vancouver's good because they didn't have Ryan Gold. I would never say that. I don't get my mentions on Twitter. But we can't replay it. What happened, what's in the past is the past. I wanted to say LA Galaxy could be also one of the surprise good teams. I wanted to see Paint sell in AFCON because that's when he, made his huge LA Galaxy debut, but Ghana didn't even qualify for the tournament. But maybe, he's over there practicing, getting in for, I don't know. I would love to see them, LA Galaxy, hit the ground running. They'll have Puig back, which is probably a bigger moral victory than an on-field victory. I think that, what he brings in personality, what he brings in spirit to the team far outweighs what he brings with his feet. And, I think Galaxy, they only need a couple things to go right. You already saw them stock up on defense. They sure saw the problem and knew how to address it, bringing in Glesnes from Philadelphia, one of the best, MLS defender of the year multiple times.
What a player. One of the things that I'm looking at, this is my prediction, and it's kind of a league prediction. You look at what happened in the summer transfer window, look at how the back end of the season played out, look at who was important in the league, look at which teams were important to the league. There is a clear trend, and that is big name, big player acquisitions. And, you look at what Son did in LA, you look at obviously what Messi and friends are doing in Miami, whether you like it or hate it, doesn't really matter. But it's easy sometimes to feel like, oh, well, of course LA and of course Miami can get it, but Thomas Mueller's in Vancouver, right? And that is because Vancouver had the ambition to go try, and they actually did some work to get him. They bought his rights first, I think, and then went out and negotiated to get him in. Other teams can do this. Mid-market teams need to pay attention. there is other talent in there. Anders Dreyer was one of the best players in the league. I think he's a name that most people were not familiar with, coming into the season.
Sure.
So there is talent out there. Teams can figure that out, but they need to be aggressive. They need to be ambitious. And just recently, Dane St. Clair turned down a big contract in Minnesota to go for a smaller contract in Miami. That is because he is lured by the prospect of playing with actual superstars. And I know it's messy, yes, but if I don't know, man, if Minnesota had brought in Mueller and somebody else, do you think he turns that down? I don't think he does. I think he stays to play with the big star. If Mueller and Harry Kane were in Minnesota, Dane St. Clair would still be in Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've seen the Messi effect, many different times. In fact, 40 minutes is the first time we bring up his name. That's probably only because we're talking Western Conference. The Eastern, it'll be first true. 16 seconds. I like what Foxy says. MLS should be targeting players from smaller African nations. They're catching up to big nations like Nigeria, Ghana now. Well, we saw Ghana missed AFCON, and the team I'm thinking of is Burkina Faso, a country I'd never heard of up until a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now they have the guy from Leverkusen, Tapsoba, Traore from Sunderland. They have some big guys there now. A couple MLS players who I'm actually gonna look that up now while you continue. But yeah, we thought MLS was gonna kind of get South America, but now it seems like South American teams are taking MLS players.
True.
Why not Africa? Well, visa issues, number one, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. I do like that. There's talent everywhere. Look, I want to bring in one thing that kind of ties back to what you were saying about Vancouver, which is if you don't get better, you get worse. And I think a team very much at risk this offseason is San Diego. They were a very, very solid team for most of the season, but they were not always the most consistent team. I think they lost more games than I would like for a team who finished first in the West. They needed more support for Dreyer, and I think they really need to add more depth to the midfield. Hannibal Godoy, I think, was altogether too important for them to be sustainable long term. And I'm not saying that as a big criticism of Godoy. I just think that group could use a little bit of help.
Yeah, I agree. I found out the player from the African country was Monungo from Seattle Sounders. Might have a big role to play in this upcoming season from Burkina Faso, I believe the country is called. All right. Quick hits. 1 or 2 sentences each. Which team easily outperforms 2025? Scott.
Dallas. Acosta was not it for them. They were one of the worst home teams in the West. Add a couple of productive pieces, win your games at home, stay healthy, and you're a much better team in 2026.
I really wanted to say Austin, but I think they're going to mess it up one way or another. But they turned, they got Jaden Nelson. They sold Bakari and got Jaden Nelson in $5 million cash. Like, sign me up on that. But, I don't think that's going to be an easy outperform. I think it's going to be a tough one because there are so many teams ahead of them. But the Seattle Sounders, right? They lost a lot of minutes to injuries in 2025. Jesus Ferreira forgot how to play. I think they rebuild, get some health, and hopefully bounce back strong. Remember, Pedro de la Vega 2 years ago was the plan. That was the plan, Pedro de la Vega. And then he got hurt, missed most of the season. Last year, he's available and not really doing too much. I think that Ferreira, Jordan Morris, they just re-signed Paul Rothrock. I loved player. I hope to talk a lot about Kalina Costa-Rienzi next season. They have some young players they can still build around. So I want to see them get younger. And I think that they can overperform.
I like it.
Next, which team can't repeat their success in 2025? And I kind of... Can I just to copy you, San Diego?
Please, go ahead.
I think it's almost a bad thing how much success they had in the first season. We saw Austin did that. They had a great first season, but even their striker, Milan Olowski, they lucked into getting him when Philadelphia didn't want to re-sign him. 10 goals in 5.3 90-minute stretches. I mean, you don't get that kind of production, just pulling players out of a hat, but that's what they did. San Diego took a lot of chances, and the chances paid off. That doesn't happen every season, so I think they have a chance at getting worse. And, I mean, if they don't finish first, they finish worse. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah, it's all downhill for them. My team that can't repeat in 2025 is Vancouver. It's a very similar thought process. The depth did great work, but they were really overstretched, and we were kind of waiting for something to give, the bottom to fall out somewhere. It didn't really happen for them, and I'm not sad about that at all. They did great work, but they need to improve. They need to improve because the league around them is improving, and I'm not sure that they are the team in the best position to actually improve. So I think they take a step backwards.
Absolutely. Which player breaks out in 2026? For this, I looked at the team who scored very high and then scored very low. What team hurt for goals the most? Your Real Salt Lake. RSL, they identified the problem. They're very good at that. And they tried to patch it. Now, William Agata was not the guy, but they got Ruan Cruz, who I want to see a lot more of, and Victor Olutanji. I picked Victor Olutanji just because I think that he is going to have right of first refusal on putting the ball in the back of the net. He scored a bunch at the end of last season. So, I have him tied with Christoph Velde from Portland.
Yeah. I like those shots. I think Olatunji could be one. I think Velde I think people who are paying attention have seen that this guy is going to be big. For me, I'm throwing around somebody like Jaden Nelson, because he's made a move to an Austin team who desperately needs the offensive help. And if Jaden Nelson can find any sort of consistency, then he is going to provide the help that they need, and he's going to have a big year. He made this move specifically to get more playing time ahead of the World Cup. He's trying to get into a World Cup squad. He doesn't want to be playing second fiddle or third fiddle in Vancouver. So he is pushing himself and betting on his abilities here. I like that. Playing, I think, with somebody like Owen Wolf, I think will be good. And then, Brandon Vasquez will come back at some point and be healthy. And I think there is a potential partnership there with Jaden Nelson, finding somebody to supply the ball to when he's not scoring himself. So I think he has a good chance to be a breakout player this next season.
Absolutely. And this is not in the doc, but I had a great question here from Sam. Who do you think will be a big MLS club transfer this offseason, sort of like Evander to Cincy scenario? So I guess we're looking for like players who aren't happy or are moving interleague.
Ooh, club to club. Oh, Sam, what a good question. I mean, we already had Dane St. Clair, who's one of the better goalies in the league, club to club. Ooh, that is a good one. Can you think of anybody who's really unhappy where they're at right now?
Not like a number 10 type guy, but I already have. I just wrote Canada on my notes as soon as I saw that one come up, because I thought of Jaden Nelson. I thought of Dante Seeley, two guys who already made that move. As far as in the league, I'm like kind of scrolling now. Maybe I like RSL kind of jumps to mind, but I don't really, I can't pinpoint anyone on there. Maybe like an Albert Rusnak type player who maybe is not unhappy, just kind of needs a little refresher. Because we saw a lot of MLS trades didn't work out really last season. Dejan Joveljic, I guess we'll call that an exception, although he left a little to be desired. For sure. Jesus Ferreira, Albert Rusnak had a really good season. I didn't know he had that left on it, but maybe I'm just going to throw a name out there. This Eastern Conference doesn't count, but sticking with Canada, Georgi Mihailovic.
Didn't he just move to Toronto like this season?
Yes.
Interesting. I was thinking that Colorado, because they moved him on, has the space to do this. So it's interesting that you thought of him, because I was thinking Colorado could go for somebody. They need the help.
They already signed a midfielder from Lens. They got Dante Sealy. They got Noah Cobb from Atlanta. So they're already making those moves for sure. But although we don't have the answers for you right now, we will have the answers when we do our season preview, which is coming up really just around the corner, man. And I got to get it going because I got NWSL teams to take care of soon. I mean, that's a week's worth of work, but 30 teams now. We know we're going to be covering them right here. Next time you see us, we're going to be talking about the Eastern Conference, and then we're just turning the wheels, talking about big time trades and doing that thing. Make sure you go to YouTube, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform, search for the Designated Pundits, or just search MLS. We're there now. If you ask Grok or like any of the AI what the best MLS gambling website is, they'll send you to the Designated Pundits. That's a very niche market, but one that we're really proud of. So thank you guys for joining us and taking your time out today. I know holiday season is busy, but we took the time here to talk to you, and you guys showed up. Really love that. Thank you guys so much. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a great holiday season.